Welcome to the 2022 Summer Hawk Internship presentation. I'm Madison Estes, I'm 16, and I'm going to be a junior in high school this year.
I'm Jordan, I'm 15, and I'm going to be a sophomore in high school this year.
My name is Catherine Ziegler, I am 18, and I will be a college freshman this year.
My name is Emma Durnan, I'm 17, I'll be a senior in high school.
This is Courtney Zink, our leader and work mom. The Hawk Internship is a natural resources stewardship internship program that is paid. We get to learn about all kinds of different careers in wildlife, forestry, and other natural resources. You have to be a sophomore through senior at a local high school or in an equivalent program. We do forest monitoring every Tuesday every week throughout the course of our internship.
Week 1 was all about forest monitoring with John Punches and Caitlin Rushlow. We first started out at the Wallowa Resources office, getting to know each other, having our job orientation, and getting our work supplies. John Punches is an OSU professor of forestry at Oregon State University, and Caitlin Rushlow is a forest monitoring specialist here at Wallowa Resources. They first took us out Davis Creek, out the North Highway. We first learned tree species such as lodgepole pine, ponderosa, Eggleston spruce, Douglas fir, grand fir, and larch. We were at the place where the plots we would be monitoring every Tuesday for the rest of our internship were. Plots are a very detailed 1 acre radius of the forest. We first learned how to use our tools. Some of the tools we used were the hypsometer, which is used for measuring the height of trees and how far away they are. Then the clinometer, which is used for also measuring the height of trees and the angle of the hillside. We prefer the hypsometer because it's faster and it does the calculations for us. The next tool we learned about was the densiometer, which is also used for measuring the overstory of the trees. Then we learned about dead and down, or 1,000-hour fuels with a rebel pole. A rebel pole is 4 feet long, and it's in a foot, half a foot, and 3-inch segments. The next day we went down with John Punches to do an actual plot, practicing working together and getting to know everyone. And we also learned about bearing trees and what they are used for. They are used for finding the plot center again if the center stake is broken or lost. The next day we were at the Watershed Festival, connecting to our community and teaching the kids about pollinators and bees.
Week 2 started with the campout. This campout was at the Davis Creek monitoring site where we were doing our overarching forest monitoring project. This was mostly supposed to be a group bonding activity as well as extra work for plot monitoring. This was one of the greatest trips from this internship in my experience, and some of our fondest memories were made from this trip. The rest of this week we were in partnership with the Wallowa Mountains Hells Canyon Trails Association. The executive director, Mike Hansen, paired us with one of their volunteers, Pip Redding, for trail maintenance in the Wallowa Mountains. Trail maintenance is clearing out overgrowth or hazardous materials on the trails and also improving the drainage of creeks or other sources of water on the trails to prevent erosion, keep trails safe for all users, and improve access to trails. Some of the different types of tools we used on the trail maintenance crews were the crosscut, handsaw, and axes meant for helping cut down trees and live trees, clippers/loppers for brush and shrubbery, and plaskies and shovels for helping move stuff on the trails such as rocks. Trails help improve the quality of life for citizens in areas, help their access to outdoor recreation, which also in turn helps tourism and funding for the agencies. In these before and after photos provided by Mike Hansen, we can see how much trail maintenance crews actually get to do. In this before photo, you see not much of trail at all, while in the after, you can see how much improved access there would be for people who might not be as physically capable. Even though this was one of my favorite weeks, we did have some struggles. For one, a lot of our equipment was very heavy, and in the heat of the day, this made us take more frequent breaks. However, this helped us learn more of our limitations for ourselves and the rest of our crew, and we traded off carrying some of the heavier equipment to help divvy up the workload. Despite all of these struggles, we got to know each other a lot better during this week, and I felt that this was one of our best weeks for group bonding.
Week 3 was aspens and a little bit of plant identification. We spent the week with Lindsay Miller, the Youth Education Manager at Wallowa Resources. We talked about how aspens are a keystone species, which means they play a big part in an ecosystem, and there can be major downfalls without them there. We talked about how aspen shoots of the young trees have cloned genetics from the young, bigger aspens, and how aspens create habitat for many animals like small birds and small mammals. We visited 2 enclosure sites, the Elk Creek Riparian site with willows and dogwood in their enclosures, and the Salt Creek Summit site with aspens in the enclosure. We talked about how the maintenance of these enclosures fluctuates based on staff and how they need to be checked regularly for buildup and down fences. At the Salt Creek Summit enclosures, we talked about different types of fences, including hog panels, wood pole, double hog panels, and T-post and wood pole fences. While we were there, we found that the T-post and wood pole fences worked the best. While we were there, we also flagged the double hog panel fences to help deter birds and deer from crashing. We did a little bit of stand monitoring, which involved filling out a sheet of which trees were in the enclosure, including aspens and conifers, a drawing or diagram of what's in the enclosure, and the number of young trees and old trees. We talked about how enclosures are helping slow the decline of aspen that is caused by drought, lack of disturbance such as fire, and overgrazing by animals. Week 4 was range and invasive weeds. We spent the week with Kelly Berkmeyer, a range specialist, Mike Beachy with the Sumac Prairie and the Nature Conservancy, Kevin Salagi with the Nez Perce Homeland, and Montana Pagano with Nez Perce Fisheries. Our first day with Kelly, we talked a lot about Medusa head. Medusa head is an invasive weed from the Mediterranean region that crowds out native plants and forage for livestock. Also on our first day, we handpicked Medusa head along the road to help stop the spread by cars. We talked about her control method, which is an herbicide called Rejuva. Rejuva is an herbicide sprayed every 4 years and controls cheatgrass and Medusa head. We went up to a pre-treatment plot where she identifies plants and the amount of plants in the plot, and she's using this data to help determine the effectiveness of Rejuva. Our second day was with Mike, and we were on the Sumac Prairie. We handpicked more Medusa head, went over a post-treatment area, and talked about the Nature Conservancy's control methods for Medusa head. While on the post-treatment area, we used an app called ArcGIS Quick Capture, which tracks your route, your GPS point of where you found Medusa head, and a picture and approximate amount. We talked about the control methods that they're using, which are 2 herbicides, Rejuva and Plateau. Plateau is sprayed every 2 years and controls a variety of weeds along with Medusa head. We found that in the post-treatment area, less Medusa head was growing back after treatment. Our third and final day was spent with Kevin and Montana on the Nez Perce Homeland project in Wallowa. While we were there, we picked thistle on an outcropping above the arbor for it to be mowed and cleared for picnic tables. In the afternoon, we visited the Nez Perce Visitor Center, where we talked about the history of Nez Perce growing and managing crops in the county, and their garden they had on Starvation Ridge. The Starvation Ridge garden was governed with the law of Tomawint, the law that binds us to and makes us accountable to this land. This law helped guide them in knowing they could not take too much out at a time to sustain them as a food source for this coming year and for the many decades to come.
Week 5 was river restoration and water management. We worked with many different organizations this week, including the Nez Perce Fisheries, Nez Perce Homeland, Grande Ronde Model, and the Grande Ronde Model Watershed. We also worked with many people this week, including Montana Pagano, Kevin Salagi, Ian Wilson, David Bates, and Marcy Osborne. We also used many different tools this week, including the shovel, knife, clippers, gloves, bags, D-nets, smaller nets, electroshockers, and aerators. On Monday, we worked with Montana Pagano and Kevin Salagi at the Nez Perce Homeland restoration site. We pulled teasel and thistles there. Teasel and thistles are invasive species. Invasive species are typically non-native and have little to no competition in their area. Both teasel and thistles have a very high silica content, which leads to rapid growth in sturdy cells. The high silica content also leads to a resistance against fungal diseases and bug infestations. Because of this, in the early spring, when plants are competing for nutrients, the thistles and teasel often push out our native plants. On our second half of the day, when we were done pulling teasel and thistles, Montana walked us around the restoration site. She pointed out several important things that they have changed and explained to us why they changed them. The next day, we went out with Ian Wilson and Montana Pagano again. There, we learned the monitoring process for freshwater aquatic life. We were moving the fish from the restoration site so they wouldn't be harmed. We electroshocked the fish, as you can see, the electroshocker in the right corner, and then we had netters standing behind the shockers to capture the stunned fish. We then put them in buckets with aerators on them, and after we had enough fish, we moved them up onto the bank for our other colleagues to identify the species. After we were done for that day, we moved all of our fish to a safer area where the river restoration was not happening. The fish biologists study almost all aspects of fish life, including anatomy, behavior, and environment. The information we collected today is going to be used by fish biologists in the future and in the present to identify any changes of anything that happened above. River restoration is the act of restoring a river to its natural state. In the 1900s, we channelized rivers because at the time we believed that that was the most efficient way to govern our commons. We channelized the rivers to get more land for farming, and we believed it would help with animals. We did not know that the channelization makes a river very swift, as well as getting rid of our natural wetlands. Our natural wetlands helped in the summer to keep grass green for animals, and it really helped the farmers keep their plants green. To increase our land and animal health, Wallowa County is working with the Nez Perce Fisheries and other organizations to restore our Wallowa County rivers. We have worked on a new restoration site. As you can see, we added several new side channels as well as restoring wetland areas to the place. The wetland areas are already providing more habitat for small mammals and birds. Our new side channels are helping our juvenile fish because rivers are so swift, the channels give juvenile fish a place to rest and a place to hide from predators. Our new side channels and wetland areas also help control flooding. After we channelized rivers, there was unpredicted flooding that damaged many people's homes and our land. Some effects we've seen already from our river restoration is we have seen the return of sockeye salmon. We haven't seen the sockeye salmon in Wallowa County for nearly 100 years. And we've already seen a higher juvenile fish survival rate compared to many decades before. On Thursday, we went out with water masters David Bates and Marcy Osborne. Marcy Osborne is the Baker County District Water Master, and David Bates is our Wallowa County District Water Master. Water masters monitor the water usage across their district. They make sure all the farmers receive their allotted amount of water, as well as making sure that we don't overuse that amount of water, otherwise our lakes and reservoirs will go dry. We monitor how full our reservoirs are throughout many parts of the year, as well as measuring cubic feet per second, which is how fast water is coming out of another body of water. We measure the water temperature as well as the water height. With David Bates and Marcy Osborne, we went and measured parts of rivers outside the county, as well as measuring groundwater in wells outside of Joseph. Well water is very important to land and homeowners because it provides nice clear water for them. Then after that, we traveled to the Wallowa Lake and talked about the water levels as well as measuring them. The Wallowa Lake is very important to our county because it provides a nice spot for tourists, which in turn gives us more money, and it also provides a nice habitat for all of our mammals as well as aquatic life. And we talked about rebuilding the dam. In the past, we've struggled with trying to rebuild the dam, which we've been trying to do since the early 1900s. Recently, we got money from the state of Oregon to try to rebuild our dam, but with the inflation prices, we are still struggling to try to rebuild our dam.
Week 6, we had the pleasure of working with Firewise. Firewise is an organization founded by the National Fire Protection Agency, and it has a goal of helping protect land and homeowners who are in very fire-sensitive areas. We worked with the Northeastern Oregon Firewise manager, Nikki Beachy, who works here at Wallowa Resources. Specifically, we are in the Upper Loston Fork area towards the trailhead and campground areas, which has a very dense population, and it's also very dense in population with trees. Our Firewise groups were split into 2 groups. One of them was split into a meeting consisting of Madison, Emma, and Courtney. They were cutting long dry grasses and pulling small trees in the perimeter of the house that the homeowner was unable to do. This created a defensible space around her property that would help her prevent fire damage. The other group consisted of myself, Jordan, and Nikki. We loaded around 5 cords of firewood into trucks and trailers, which was then transported to a site in Enterprise to be used for community firewood. These projects help reduce the fuels around the homes we worked in and reduces the fire risk during dry season, which we are in now. We also had the pleasure of working with Kyle Bradshaw, the district fish biologist for ODF&W this week. We were working on a salmon spawning monitoring project at the ODF&W weir down in Amnaha. A weir is a structure placed in the river to capture, guide, and monitor fish in the body of water. We're also working with one of Kyle's employees, Austin. The salmon monitoring process goes as such. First, the fish are put into a small oxygenated tank of water that they are quickly netted from and moved to our monitoring care. They are measured from their nose to their tail, and they also get their gill plate punched. The gill plate punching indicates whether the fish had been at the hatchery or weir beforehand. Then they are checked for a special identification tag in their head. This indicates whether or not the same fish are returning to the correct locations after they are done spawning. After this, they are either put into traps for hatchery spawn or released back into the river to spawn naturally and go back upstream. This helped educate us on what ODF&W is doing to help the salmon populations in northeastern Oregon. The populations are staying more healthy with the hatchery efforts, and ODF&W is also helping the return of sockeye salmon to Wallowa Lake in the near future.
Week 7 was all about youth education. Our first day we went out on a hiking day with the Wallowa Resources Rent Explorers, along with Emily Bratcher, a youth education specialist at Wallowa Resources, and Rachel Halpern, a college intern for the youth education program at Wallowa Resources. We were with 14 Rent Explorers, and we first met them in their classroom, and we taught them a lesson about mammal identification. They were identifying furs, skulls, and fake animal scat, and we were just helping them along the way. After we were done with the lesson, we drove about 45 minutes up the Lost Teen Fork to the Bowman Lake trailhead. We hiked about 1.5 miles up to a waterfall. When we got to the waterfall, we ate lunch and then helped them explore the area around. After that, we hiked down, singing songs and sharing small mammal facts and sharing a little bit about our job. Thursday, we went with Lindsay Miller and the Joseph Charter School, kindergarten through 7th grade, to the Wallowa Lake State Park. We taught them lessons about forest monitoring and what we do. I taught them tree identification, how to identify trees, and what we use them for. Madison taught them how to age a tree using the tree rings and the tree borer. Catherine taught about photosynthesis and what the forest provides for us, and Emma taught about how to use our forest monitoring tools and made a relay race, making it educational and fun for our youth. Although there were challenges for everyone, my main challenges was getting everyone together and listening. It is important for youth education because these kids are our future Firewise professionals, future youth educators, foresters, forest monitors, and fish biologists. These kids are important. They are our future.
We will now be going into individual takeaways from this internship. For myself, I gained a new interest in trail maintenance, Firewise, and salmon monitoring, as well as new career research and great community connections. I did not have a good idea of what I wanted to go into college specifically before this internship, and now that I've experienced some hands-on experience with these fields, I now feel more finely tuned. I also have nightmares about Medusa Head.
Some of my takeaways were getting to know my community better, and one of my main interests in going into this internship was getting to know the native species better, such as plant species and tree species. I also enjoyed the forest monitoring and mastering it and just telling everyone that I'm a forest monitor. My favorite part was definitely being a youth educator and sharing my knowledge with the kids. I also enjoyed Firewise because I did not know what it was, and I'm excited to learn more about it. And also opened my eyes to a lot of career options in my future.
I knew a little bit about tree identification before I came to this internship, but it really helped me learn identifying a tree very quickly as well as getting the correct names for them. As you can tell by my photos, I really love working with fish, and until this internship, I didn't know that that was even an option. There are a lot of options involving careers and volunteer options for working with fish with the ODFW and many other job opportunities surrounding that.
My takeaways were how important native species are in our county and the surrounding counties, since there are more non-native species coming back into the counties. How water and forest management is continuously evolving, and how each body of water and forest is managed different from the next. And the programs for our youth, because they are our future, and each child and youth should be able to have the opportunity to learn about our environment.
Thank you to our partners and sponsors, and a big thank you to the Gray Family Foundation, the Oregon Youth Conservation Corps, Wallowa Resources, and individual donors. Thank you for making this program possible.